Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and host of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. This week, the subject for reflection is vulnerability. Why does this challenge us so much? What can we gain from showing vulnerability? And how can we welcome the courage we need to be vulnerable? From Haruki Murakami. What happens when people open their hearts? They get better. Added at the end is a guided breathing practice combined with a Solfeggio frequency 396 Hz for its ability to alleviate the feelings of guilt and fear. From poet David White, vulnerability is not a weakness, a passing indisposition or something we can arrange to do without. Vulnerability is not a choice. Vulnerability is the underlying, ever-present and abiding undercurrent of our natural state. To run from vulnerability is to run from the essence of our nature. The attempt to be invulnerable is the vain attempt to be something we are not, and most especially to close off our understanding of the grief of others. More seriously, refusing our vulnerability, we refuse the help needed at every turn of our existence, and immobilize the essential, tidal and conversational foundations of our identity. In our society, there is such a huge emphasis on being seen to have it all together and to be strong. People mostly will often override the need for pause and softness and ignore the genuine call when their heart is eager to be heard. If we start with the definition of vulnerability, from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, their leading definitions of vulnerability is capable of being physically or emotionally wounded or open to attack or damage. When vulnerability is also the way to show emotion or to allow one's weakness to be seen or known, which is ultimately to risk being emotionally hurt or judged or rejected. And our most fruitful communications do contain honesty, trust, and vulnerability. So we've taken it on board in the way that we function in the world. To show vulnerability seems like a risk. We are putting ourselves in danger. We're concerned about what it will do for our lives and our reputation. We think that if others see our fears and our tears, that they will lose trust in us, and we will ultimately feel abandoned. Yet it would seem that every single one of us desires those vulnerable moments. We have a longing to be heard on the deepest level. And yet we wear this mask of strength, and that pushes our vulnerability into the shadows. If we think of the most powerful love songs, the ones that pull most on our heartstrings, things that are played at weddings and funerals, they're the ones where the lyrics are conveying the most raw emotion, true expression of our deepest needs. So not only the feelings of loss and fear of loss, pain, angst, but also then great proclamations of desire and love. We're wearing our genuine feelings open and exposed like an open wound. And people relate to that, people connect to that. If we think about the most engaging posts on social media, they're often when somebody is open and they take risks and they risk being ridiculed and shamed and they risk derision. And although the trolls come out to mock them, people do usually thank that person for their vulnerability because they feel some sort of kinship with them. And that's because of the bravery of one person sharing. Then others can realize that they're not alone in their feelings. Vulnerability is not a weakness, and this gets disproved every time. So why is this still an issue? From Brené Brown, The Power of Vulnerability, Teachings of Authenticity, Connections and Courage. No one reaches out to you for compassion or empathy so you can teach them how to behave better. They reach out to us because they believe in our capacity to know our darkness well enough to sit in the dark with them. Brené Brown is a research professor and author, and her most famous TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, has over 60 million views to date. Some of the points from the talk when I was watching that TED Talk was one of the things that Brené Brown said was that worthy, wholehearted people had things in common. They had courage from the heart, so they were able to tell stories from their heart. They were compassionate and kind to themselves, and then in turn being able to be compassionate and kind to others. And they had a connection as a result of that authenticity. And that authenticity came when they fully embraced vulnerability. That's what made them vulnerable. And that what made them vulnerable was what made them beautiful. Again, from Brené Brown, embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness, we will discover the infinite power of our light. Vulnerability shows our courage and allows people to be seen and understood by the people who are important in their life. So if we know all of this, why is it so hard to be vulnerable? Why do we fear taking the risk to expose ourselves emotionally and sit in that uncertainty? Why do we fear it? We're taught to believe vulnerability is a weakness, and yet it takes courage because it in turn shows weakness. When we have the option of being vulnerable, we become overcautious because we're remembering times when we were hurt, we were ignored and judged when we shared something. And while we all desperately want to be seen for who we really are, it's a new space and a new expression for us, and there is always going to be part of us that still has an uncomfortable feeling around that. And because it's so rare to see people being vulnerable, we're fearing that there's something wrong if we do show emotion. But if you consider that we've got all of this going on inside of us, making that step to be vulnerable isn't weak. It takes massive, massive guts. From Madeleine L'Angle, when we were children, we used to think that when we were grown up, we would no longer be vulnerable. But to grow up is to accept vulnerability. To be alive is to be vulnerable. So what are the benefits of vulnerability? When we're being vulnerable, we're releasing our shadow of vulnerability. And those are the areas that we suppress. And when we release them, that's a liberation. We can actually then be truly who we are. And that then allows other people to see who we really are and gives them permission to connect with us on a truer and deeper level. People are then in no question about how you really feel. And I believe it gives them permission to feel safety to do the same, to open up. And then our connections just become richer and deeper. So what does conscious vulnerability look like? Choosing to be vulnerable can be taking an opportunity to share your life story with somebody, telling them about the mistakes that you have made, allowing yourself to feel difficult emotions such as shame and grief and fear, and then also share those. Maybe stepping back and reconnecting with someone that you've fallen out with. Also being honest about what you need in a relationship, and that will include setting your boundaries and voicing your expectations. And when we're consciously entering into vulnerability, at best we want to feel that we're being vulnerable with somebody that our rawness will be safe with, but yet we do have to prepare to be rejected. If you keep in your heart your intention and know that because you're taking this step to be vulnerable, you are actually being strong, your openness can be a trigger to people so that people who lack the strength will react against you. And sometimes they may feel that they're being judged and attacked. And this is especially if you're trying to show them how they may have hurt and disappointed you. It's not necessarily that you're trying to judge or attack them. It's something that you want to say, this is how I feel about that situation. Few people are able to handle that confrontation. And what you may get back is a lot of projection, a lot of pushback. But know that as long as your intention for sharing your feelings was pure, you are doing and you were doing the best that you could do. Vulnerability on a whole is a new space for people to step into. So sometimes being faced with other people's vulnerability is overwhelming for others and they don't know the best way to handle that. from Audre Lorde. And that visibility that makes us most vulnerable is that which also is the source of our greatest strength. What does vulnerability show? Vulnerability does show greater strength. It shows you and gives you a greater self-confidence. You get to realize that you have the power to handle tough situations, tough emotions, confrontation even, and as a result, you become more resilient. Vulnerability will show you your capacity to develop stronger relationships, to have deeper intimacy in your relationships. It will show you your expression of compassion, empathy, your ability for connection. And as a result, you will develop more self-love because you're meeting different aspects of yourself. You didn't realize that you had the strength, that you had this superpower to open up to so much in the face of being misunderstood, rejected, and attacked. From Paulo Coelho, 11 Minutes. The strongest love is the love that can demonstrate its fragility. So how do you prepare for that vulnerable moment? Recognize and know that you are going to feel something uncomfortable. And ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Be honest with yourself, list them down, write them down and see them in front of you. These are the things that I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of being seen in a certain light, being misunderstood, being rejected, being judged, being hated, being loved even. We do never really know how our vulnerable sharings will be received, but that doesn't mean that we should run away from them. If you want to, also you can journal, meditate, go for a walk. Just prepare yourself energetically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally for what you're about to go into. Whatever happens on the back end of that vulnerable moment, just know that whatever happens, you came through it. It's hard, it's difficult, and even though the person that you're sharing with may not respond in the way that you would like, they will see a different side of you. And whatever that means, whether that means that they see you in a brighter light, or whether they decide that they dislike you now or want to be away from you. But even within that, whatever they see, part of them will have to acknowledge that you were showing them more of yourself than they had ever seen. Again from Brené Brown. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. And when you take that opportunity or that choice to be vulnerable, know that choosing vulnerability is liberating. When we're open, we're true, we're doing something hard to get to the good. And I believe it's really worth it. We get all the good things. We get the opportunity to be our fullest self-expression, to try and be as authentic as we know how to be at that moment, to demonstrate our strength to ourselves and to others, to step into our integrity, to try and foster a more deeper way of connection. We're clear on what we want to say. We're stepping away from the security of hiding, and there can be no second guessing if we be honest and if we be vulnerable. And a closing piece from poet David White. The only choice we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability, how we become larger and more courageous and more compassionate through our intimacy with disappearance, our choice to inhabit vulnerability as generous citizens of loss, robustly and fully, or conversely, as misers and complainers, reluctant and fearful, always at the gates of existence, but never bravely and completely attempting to enter, never wanting to risk ourselves, never walking fully through the door. Thank you so much for being with me on another episode of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. I am now offering Higher Energetic Resonance Spiritual Life Coaching, and when you work with me, I will support your awakening to truth, to your innate gifts, aligning with your higher self, flowing with your intuition, and you ascending into your purpose and fullest expression. You will know that whatever you want to be or do is possible. And I intend for you to be unrecognizable to yourself, and that your transformation will serve as an inspiration to those around you in this changing world. If you want more information about that, you can click on the show notes or contact me on my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaewhittick.com. I'm also on Facebook, Carol May Whittick, on Instagram, Kazmic, Cazmick, and on Telegram, Her Conversations and Inspirations. And I close this episode out for you by leaving you with a practice. This is a breathing pattern that I'll be guiding you through, and it's often called box breathing. So you're inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and exhaling for 4 counts. It's combined with a solfeggio frequency, 396 hertz, because of its ability to alleviate the feelings of guilt and fear, which, as I mentioned through this episode on vulnerability, is one of the things that really holds us back from opening up. So something like this breathing practice and this meditation will just get you to alleviate those feelings of fear. So enjoy that, and until the next week and the next episode. Thank you. Fear is what we experience if we perceive ourselves to be in danger. This can be physical, emotional, psychological. The fear can be real or imagined. While fear is an important factor to help keep us safe, being in fear long term is detrimental to our quality of life. While we're in fear, our breathing is often affected. We can experience shortness of breath, hold our breath, depriving our bodies of oxygen, or hyperventilate, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, increasing the heart rate, raising the blood pressure, therefore making us feel more anxious. Fear takes us out of the present moment as we imagine all the potential dangers ahead of us. When we can bring our awareness back to the present and ground ourselves, we will realize that at this moment we are safe and in control. We are then able to calmly and objectively address our thoughts and then take the relevant action if needed. The breathing pattern I will be guiding you through today is often called box breathing. You will inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and exhale for 4 counts. Over time, as your capacity grows, you may choose to increase the count. Embedded in this track is the solfeggio frequency, 396 hertz, because of its ability to alleviate the feelings of guilt and fear, making space for us to experience the joys and endless possibilities of life. So first, find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed for the next 15 minutes. Sit on the floor or sit in a chair that fully supports your back. Before we begin, let's scan your body and notice if you are holding any areas of tension. Make sure your feet are placed on the ground. You can wriggle your toes or circle your ankles to release any tension and relax. Imagine your feet sinking into the ground. Slowly bring your awareness up to your calves. Feel them soften as the tension falls away. Up to your thighs again, releasing the weight of your body into the ground. Let any tension fall away from your spine and allow your back to relax. Let your arms be heavy and your hands rest on your thighs. See any tension fall down your shoulders and your arms. You can gently circle your shoulders and your hands and your wrists in one direction, and now in the opposite way. Envision your head resting lightly on the top of your neck. Allow your jaw to hang relaxed and let go of any tension you feel around your mouth and your lips. Let your tongue lie gently in your mouth. You can rest the tip of your tongue behind your teeth. Soften your cheeks. Feel the relaxation in your forehead and your brow. Now bring your attention to a point below your navel. This is the area you will be directing your breath to. It may be helpful to hold one of your hands gently against this area as a guide, so that when you breathe into this area, you'll want to see your hand move slowly outward and then return inward with your inhale. As you breathe, allow yourself to observe as the cooling sensation of your breath passes through the inner walls of your nostrils. So let us practice. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Now continue at your own pace. Allow your breathing to fall into its natural inhale and exhale pattern. Notice that any feelings of fear and anxiety are not present in your body at this time. Know that you are safe. Know that you are supported. Hold that feeling with you as you meditate for the rest of the track.